This is Will Stewart from OnlineChessLessons.net, and I'm going to be doing a quick review of the 2012 World Chess Championship match up until round 3 right now. So in the first game, you know, just to set the tone, I mean, these guys are playing for a good chunk of change this year. The total prize fund is about $2.5 million US. The winner of the match gets $1.5 million. The loser gets $1 million still in consolation. So a lot of you know, pretty high stakes match. Everything, a lot of stuff riding on these games here. Anand defending this his world championship title, and the first game began with a fairly boring draw in a theoretical line in the Grunfeld. Gelfand has been playing the Grunfeld since game 1. Game 2, there was a 25 move draw. Gelfand had the white pieces. Anand equalized easily with a semi-Slav defense, and that was that. So what we're going to be doing right here is looking at game 3, Anand versus Gelfand. Gelfand opening up with the G6. Now Anand, I guess he didn't want to test Gelfand anymore in the main lines of the Grunfeld, so he plays this 3F3, which is pretty much regarded as the anti-Grunfeld. And the idea is that after D5, which Gelfand just plays it anyway, it's also, I should mention, it's also possible to transpose or whatever, just play a King's Indian defense here with D6. And after E4, this is going to be the Samish attack with white. Anyway, Gelfand, he doesn't care. He just plays D5. And after E4, the idea is that white, without his knight on C3, it's a different type of game, as black is not going to be able to exchange right away. It's just a different way of playing against the Grunfeld, really. So, you know, the idea is that white has got the really strong center here with this pawn on F3. Maybe it's going to be conducive to some kind of, you know, psycho kingside attacks, and it's just a really solid position for white. So with Queen D2 here, you know, if Knight E2, maybe Knight C4 is going to be not very fun to meet, and there's really not a lot of options here. I mean, you don't want to go too crazy with white and play H4 right away. I suppose you could, but Queen D2 makes a lot more sense as you're trying to consolidate the position. Now you can go ahead and get the king out of the center if you need to. And so Gelfand's response, you know, I think against a move like H4, he probably would have played Knight C6, a more normal idea to meet D5 with either Knight E5 or Knight A5, either way fighting for control of the C4 square. But against Queen D2 is different, E5 now. And so E5, it makes sense, because if white takes, now you just hit the queen, and black is going to have easy equality. So after E5, D5 seems to be fairly forced. I mean, again, Knight E2 would just be horrible. Knight C4 would be winning the game on the spot, and you got to defend the pawn. So he goes ahead. Also, I should mention, if castles here, this type of liquidation in the center is only going to be favoring black. You know, at the end of this, Knight C6, black should be able to draw this game easily. You know, so moving forward, E5, he goes D5, and so with D5, white is, you know, not unexpectedly, you could say, white is trying to maintain a closed center, and he's going to be trying to attack on the king side. You know, that's pretty much the lines are drawn in the sand here. So moving forward, C6, black wants to C6, I mean, you might be thinking, well, wait a minute, isn't that going to give white a pass pawn here on the D file? And yes, it does, but black is also weakening that D5 pawn, and he's going to be trying to attack it later. So black has got to play really energetically in this type of position. He doesn't have a lot of pieces on his king side, and white can try to open it up very quickly. So black is trying to create counterplay in the center. So H4 by Anand, very direct after a couple of exchanges. Now Knight D7. And rerouting the knight over to the king side with Knight F6. So nice plan by Gelfand. You know, let's go ahead and neutralize white's attack on the king side as much as possible. And in this position, if H takes G6, probably be a pretty big mistake. It seems like Bishop H6 and white's attack is really going very well. Whereas against F takes G6, now if something like Bishop takes H6, it's probably a little too crazy to take the pawn on D5. This is probably too much, but probably just, I don't know, you could probably play Rook F7, something like this, it seems like black is not going to be having too much problems holding on here. So moving forward, after castles, now bishop d7. So, you know, just bishop d7 at first I thought it was kind of weird, but it kind of grows on you. You know, I mean, the bishop is really well placed to blockade the d-pawn, so that's good. You know, it's going to slow that d-pawn down. And what else are you going to do? You know, you got to move the bishop to get this rook in the game. Bishop f5 just speeds up white's attack with g4. So bishop d7 it is. And another bonus, bishop d7, that I didn't really, you know, take so seriously at first is that it supports knight a4, which is going to be trading off this key defender. It's also going to be opening up the c-file for black's pieces. So, okay, so now king to a1. So Anand, you know, when I first saw this, I thought maybe he just kind of lost it for a second. You know, I was a little confused by this. You know, I mean, he just marches the king in the corner. It's like a really critical moment in the game. He's trying to attack on the king side. But upon further investigation, okay, so king b1 makes sense, right? I mean, the c-file is open. King b1 makes sense. But king a1 in this position, it took me a little bit more time to get that one. So let's say again, knight e2 is not going to work. Knight c4, if white, you know, let's not even think about the tactics, just conceptually, if white gives up that dark squared bishop, all of his pawns on white squares, black's going to have a very good game. So, okay, knight e2, no good. Moving the bishop, where are you going to move it to? You know, like bishop b5 or something? White doesn't really want to trade pieces like that. And the only other move that I could see that was like, did anything. I mean, bishop h6 is okay. But again, rook f7 or just taking the bishop, and it's not really clear if that's going to help white more than black. So and instead, just king a1. You know, the only other move I could really see that really helps out white. d6, you don't really want to do. You know, this is going to make it easier for black. Maybe bishop e6. It just seems to make it easier. Instead, maybe knight h3. That was my idea. Knight h3, trying to maneuver the knight into e6 or something like that. But I think Anand's idea with king to a1 was pretty cool, actually. It's a very useful waiting move to tuck the king so far in the corner. Gelfand, however, responds very energetically with e4, and so this was pretty cool. You know, e4 was quite on point, I would say. I mean, if pawn takes, simply knight g4, and black for the sacrifice pawn is going to be, you know, he's going to be getting a lot of pressure here on the bishop. Also, I was thinking something pretty interesting here. If pawn takes, maybe rook takes c3, queen takes, knight takes e4, and now white, there's some questions that need to be answered. Knight a4 comes, a lot of pressure on this diagonal, as well as threatening knight g3 and potentially knight f2. So this is not an easy position anymore for white. Queen c1, knight g3, it's kind of like, well, where's the rook go? You know, a lot of questions here. So anyway, this e4 idea was pretty cool, and I think if knight takes, I suppose you could take the pawn. I don't see why not, and that's going to give black a pretty comfortable game there as well. I mean, even knight takes this way, it seems to work out all right. A little bit risky, I should mention, a little risky. Knight d6, trying to scoop this bishop in. It is a little dicey, but I think black is going to be okay. Instead, Anand here, he plays bishop d4. This has got to be a good move. I mean, neutralizing this bishop on this newly opened diagonal. Okay, that makes a lot of sense there. And knight a4 now. So black is starting to heat things up. You know, he tries to stack a pawn with e4, opening up his bishop. Very thematic move, got to do it. And now with knight a4, starting to lean on this c3 knight, and you know, now he plays queen a5, comes out right away. I think also here it was possible to take this pawn. I don't believe that Anand would have recaptured. I think he probably would have played knight f4 and tried to sack a pawn himself to just play faster and develop his attack more, maybe bishop d3, trying to open up more lines to attack. You know, he could even take here, and now white's got two open files to attack black's king. So, interesting stuff by Anand. He plays knight e2, and Gelfand, he said no worry. Gelfand goes from maybe trying to win a pawn or something to actually sacrificing a pawn himself with queen a5. However, the sacrifice seems to be very sound. After knight takes e4, we see a trade of queens, which I think objectively should help black, as black's king side is a little bit shakier than white's king. And we see a mass exchange, trade of queen and knight there, and now rook f5. That's the key. Rook f5, leaning on this pawn, and as we're going to see after a couple more exchanges now, so mass exchanges, after the dust clears, Anand plays d6. And what else can he do? Black is got some nasty threats on the c-file. His knight is well placed. The bishop is blockading, supports the knight. Maybe he can swing out to this diagonal if necessary. So Anand plays d6 here, and he doesn't really have a lot of options. I mean, if he plays, I guess rook h4 was an interesting idea, but maybe just the simple rook e5, threatening to sack or bishop b5 even, just trying to hit this knight, and with the threats on the open c-file, black has got it's dangerous. If white wants to gamble, it's going to be dangerous. And Anand here with 50 minutes, Gelfand with an hour. They need to make 18 more moves to reach move 40 in the time control to get another hour. And Anand, he plays it safe. And this is characteristic of his style. He really gets criticized a lot. I mean, it's not like d6 is playing it that safe, but he gets criticized a lot. I was watching this game and in the live broadcast and whatnot, and everybody's saying Anand, he gets the advantage, and then he just, gets low on time, he cops out and takes a draw. And, I'm not crazy about all these draws that I've been seeing, and I'm definitely not crazy about how Anand has been playing as a world champion the last 2 years, not playing very much. When he does play, he doesn't win that much, not winning many tournaments, but, I will not knock the guy for being a practical player. Both these guys extremely experienced. I believe this is the oldest world championship, adding up their total ages since something like the 1850s or something. So I'm not going to knock Anand for being an experienced practical player and playing d6 here. This does allow rook c5. So now Gelfand, he sacked a pawn. The d6 pawn is sketchy, but, he's got excellent coordination, excellent activity with his pieces, and white is way behind in development. So white with rook d1. And so now Gelfand played a5. I thought, a5, I mean, it's an interesting move. I think I would have preferred rook c2. I feel like it just, I don't see why not, really. And it seems like a good move to put pressure on the knight. Maybe bishop b5 in the future. But, Gelfand with a5, this becomes a useful move later. And he played it after 10 minutes of thought. So I think he was looking at rook c2. Didn't see anything concrete, so he goes with a5. It's just going to be a useful move in the attack. So rook h4 by Anand, a nice rook lift, definitely necessary as he can't move his knight yet. The bishop is still out of play. So I think here, when I was watching the live broadcast, I was seeing a lot of people saying white's winning, blah, blah, but honestly, I mean, let's think about this, right? White has an extra pawn here. Black has excellent pressure, and white's way behind on coordination. His knight is bishop a little clumsy here. But after b3, Anand starts fighting back. And in this position, after knight d4, now we can see rook h4 was just killer. Getting the super strong knight on d4 is great. Rook d2, white finally managed to exchange. He liberates his position. Now rook e1. So, okay. Let's just say rook e1, it kind of led to a pretty drawish position in the game, to be honest. I think the only other tries, I mean, this is where people were saying, no, he's got to go for the win. And at first, I saw the position, and I thought white has got very good winning chances. But as it turns out, even though he's got this incredibly powerful knight on d4, and, it seems like he's solved his problems with development and everything like that, the rooks are going to get in the game, white has to worry about defending a very straightforward threat, black's rooks on the 7th rank. That's it. If white tries to dip out of there, he's just going to shoot himself in the foot. White's going to go from a decent position, some winning chances, to completely losing. And something like this, I mean, the king is just, this would be a disaster. So Anand plays rook e1, now rook d2. The idea being that if check, I guess you could go king f6 or king g8. And either way, white can't take the bishop. He's got to worry about getting mated. And if he plays like rook h1, I mean, this is only going to be helping black. It seems like rook h1 maybe takes, Rook takes. Now you could even see rook c2, rook d2, similar to the drawing method black used in the game, or just rook c6. White in this position would still be up a pawn, but it seems like black would be able to draw it. Anyway, not to get too off topic. So rook d2 here by Gelfand. Nice move, starting to establish some mate threats here. King b1, and now bishop f5. Forcing a trade, more or less. Now rook e7, and king g6. Very important to come to g6, because in the future, just on general principles, moving to king g6 was better, but on general principles, if he goes king to f6, in the future, if this pawn queens with check, he will queen with check. You know, that could be important. Maybe it's not. It could be. So just on general principles, king g6, avoiding any potential checks, good call. So, okay, so rook c7 now. You know, we know black can't take that. He just plays rook e8. And black's, you know, his drawing method is very simple here. He's just going to get the rooks on the 7th rank. He's going to be threatening some kind of mates there. And he should have more than enough for a draw. I mean, it looks dangerous because white's got this d6 pawn so far advanced. But honestly, I just think, you know, it's no big deal. In this position, rook h1, black could have taken the dangerous pawn. But what that's going to do after a move like rook takes b7, it seems like white is going to maintain an extra pawn and some chances of winning. I mean, it's tough to win these rook and pawn in games like this with just one extra pawn. But the fact that black's pawns are all separated, you know, white's got all the hopes of winning here. So rook h1 instead, Gelfand, much better move, just rook to e2 and connects the rooks, and now there's no way for white to stop the draw. He tries d7, couple of checks later, they shake hands, and that's it. You know, there's just no way for white to avoid just getting to avoid the draw here. Quite frankly, I mean, if he tries to run this way, who knows? Black could even just do this. If he tries to run this way, we see another check, and the same idea. And now black is going to be like, you know, if white tries too hard to get out of this, black is going to be the one pushing for the win. So a pretty cool game. You know, I like this game quite a lot more than the first 2 rounds they played, because it seemed like both players were really fighting for the win. So even though Gelfand was kind of playing catch-up, you know, it seemed the whole game, you know, he had some chances, and he was able to hang on because of extremely active play. So hopefully we'll see these guys, you know, continue to heat up and take the gloves off for, you know, round 4 and the ensuing games. So this is Will Stewart from Online.